And the recording is on. Hello, everybody, once again, and welcome on our 20th Agile with Ukraine meetup. And today we have wonderful guest, Manuel Pais. You may know Manuel by reading the great book, Team Topologies, and we're blessed to have Manuel here today. Yep. So we're going to start with a short introduction of our initiative of Agile with Ukraine, and then we're going to pass on to Manuel. All right.
And today I will be very silent. Hello, everyone, because I have some problem with my eye. So I'm still here. It's Artem, and we are with Andrei launching this Agile with Ukraine. And it's time to you, my friend, to show this presentation. I will be just a silent observer.
All right. All right. So let me just share my screen. All right, here it is. Yep. So we're Agile with Ukraine. We've started a bit more than 1 month ago, and we have 3 goals with our initiative. First one is to raise awareness about what's going on in Ukraine. Second one is to raise money for people who are in Ukraine and for Ukrainian warriors who are bravely protecting our country. And third one is to give you some knowledge, and for that we have Manuel over here. And right after we finish with our presentation, Manuel will do a great job and deliver a great presentation. So let's start. First of all, why do we want to raise the awareness about stuff that is going on in Ukraine? Because currently we feel that it's beginning to feel like a new normality that we have war where the end people are dying in the world. It is very, very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate, and we cannot stay silent, and we cannot let people think that it is okay. It's not okay, because the more it's lasting, the more people are dying, and more really heartbreaking stories are coming from Ukraine. And we want to show you what's really happening in Ukraine. And for example, this is Kyiv, our capital, and this happened on the second day or third day of war. So this is the residential building, and you had missiles flying into residential building. That's for Russians saying that they are only attacking the military objects. It doesn't look like it. As for other cities which are under a great attack, as we have Kharkiv, the city with a population 1.4 million of people. This is the city where we have a lot of students. This is the city where we have a lot of technology development, for example, for aviation over here. And on pictures on the top, you might see the central square of Kharkiv, which is the biggest square in Europe, right? And on the bottom you have Chernihiv and Sumy. Chernihiv, by the way, was under siege for more than 1 month, and about 75% of Chernihiv was destroyed. Yep. What are they attacking? They're attacking everything that we have and everything that we are proud of. For example, this is the biggest aircraft, which is called Mriya, or if we could translate the word Mriya, it's the dream. It's Antonov plane, and they just destroyed it because it was a symbol of Ukrainian progress over there. Another picture from Kyiv. By the way, this is not far away from where Artem is and where he grew up. This is one of the newest shopping malls that was built in Kyiv. Yeah.
And one of the biggest in Europe.
Yeah, and also one of the biggest in Europe as well. This is how Kyiv looks. This is close to the business center. Yeah. And some more pictures from Chernihiv. So this is the football stadium, which was renovated some years ago. Now you can see what there is on the football field, right? And of course, one of the biggest tragedies that we have right now in Ukraine is Mariupol. The city has been under the siege for more than 60 days. More than 90% of the city was destroyed, and we have still more than 100,000 people in Mariupol who are under siege, and Russians do not allow to arrange a green corridor for them. The only thing we're asking for the green corridor for civilians and for injured, and also for the bodies of our fallen warriors, so they would be buried with dignity. But they do not allow to do that. Of course, you might see what happened in Bucha. We will not include the horrifying pictures from Bucha massacre, but you can find them under the hashtag. And there are multiple cities around Kyiv, like Bucha, Borodyanka. This is what happened in Borodyanka, like Irpin. And one of the latest shocks that we experienced is actually what happened in Kramatorsk. It happened on the 8th of April, and more than 4,000 people were waiting for the evac train, and they just launched the missile into the railway station where just people were, right? We also did not include one of the latest things that happened, that they launched 7 missiles on Odessa, and they have hit a residential building where there was a family, grandmother, mother, and the child. And child was only three months old. So by the beginning of the war, the child had only 1 month old, and the child didn't see anything else almost beside the war. Yes. And what do they leave behind themselves when they leave? Dobro Park is a great example, and here we have some pictures actually from Artem's archive from this winter, where his family spent times in Dobro Park, where there was the residence of Santa Claus, and you may see what happened to it. Like, what in hell happened? Why did they need that? Because they just want to destroy everything that they see and everything that brings us joy. And this is also an iconic place because a lot of kids went out there, and a lot of kids spent time with their families over there in Dobro Park. And this actually inspired also Artem and Artem's wife to launch also one great initiative, which is called UA Kids. UA Kids Today. Yeah, and they gather drawings of kids, of children, drawings of their feelings, drawings of their emotions, and they create an online gallery from that. So for example, over here, we have a picture from Zahar, who is 11 years old, and he's from Bucha, right, Artem? Yeah.
Yeah, so this boy is living in Bucha, and from his window of his flat, he's seen how this Mria airplane, was his dream, one of the biggest in the world, the biggest initially, was destroyed. And he was so impressed that he started drawing his emotions on the paper, and it's one of the most popular. It was on Reuters and NBC, CBS News and others. So yeah, we're trying to show the world how it looks like through the emotions and eyes of the child.
Yeah, but no matter how hard it is for us, we did not sit and complain as people. We already started clearing out the cities, and this is what happens in Irpin right now. And people, as soon as there was information that it is pretty safe to come back, because so for everybody from here to understand, currently there is no safe place in Ukraine because every region of Ukraine is under the air alarms. Yeah, people just started coming back and cleaning the city. Yeah. As for our developers since first day, they were already in the basements or shelters or bomb shelters in subways, but they kept on doing their good work. And we as Ukraine has pretty rich potential in IT and a lot of ongoing contracts in IT, and we did not lose any large contracts in IT. So yeah, we're not people who just sit there and complain. And why do we show it also to you? Because the majority of people who are joining us are people from Europe, and Ukraine is not that far. So I'm living for the last 10 years, almost 11 years in Poland. It's 800 kilometers to Kyiv. And here in Warsaw, you cannot feel that there is actually war over there. But people who are actually over there, they're going through hell every day. And they're fighting not only for freedom of Ukraine, but they're also fighting for freedom of the whole Europe. And that's why, coming from our first goal to the second goal of our initiative, we started to think with Artem, how can we help? And with what can we help? And since 2014, there was a foundation which is called Uniters, which was helping Ukrainian people and Ukrainian army, because the full-scale war started more than 2 months ago on February 24th, but the first invasion of Russia started in 2014. And United Foundation were helping Ukrainian people since 2014. This is foundation that was created by the Ukrainians here in Warsaw, and they are super effective in delivering help. So I will just show you a picture of help that they delivered by 10th of April. So it is a bit outdated because much more has been delivered. But since the beginning of the war, the foundation delivered more than 3,050 tons of help to Ukraine. It's a great amount. Just think of it, 3,000 tons. It's really, really much. And I've been over there today, and today was actually one of the good days because we personally packed a big pack which is going to Popasna. This is in Lugansk, where this is one of the hottest places right now in Ukraine. And with the money that we raised, a lot of stuff went over there. Most of stuff that went over there were medical stuff, like medical kits, but also some tactical equipment, like even starting from boots, ending up with tactical drones for the reconnaissance of the field. So with our initiative, we raised right now more than $50,000 to help Ukrainian people, and we're looking to raise much, much, much more. So we ask you also to donate and not to stay silent about what's happening in Ukraine. About donations, how you can make, we will share all of the needed links in the chat. And also you can donate via PayPal, which is on our website, and also on zrzutka.pl, where it's very, very easy to do. Okay, so we've spoken about our first two goals about raising awareness. We believe that awareness has been raised, and we believe that donation will come up. And now it's maybe the time to pass the mic to Manuel and have some great insights and knowledge. Manuel.
Hi, thank you, Andrei. I just want to say I think it's a really important initiative, AgileWithUkraine, and it's important to see what's happening and to even and to keep the awareness on what's happening. One of the things Andrei told me when we had the first call is, of course, there's a lot of help needed now for so many things, and even when the war is over, which we all hope will be soon, there's still going to be so much help needed to rebuild. And yeah, I think people of Ukraine deserve help, and that we do whatever we can, whether it's donating, that's great, whatever you can, and if just sharing the message, doing sharing with people you know, sharing with your networks, I think there's always some effect. And so for me, giving this talk is just a grain of sand, let's say, in what's needed, but I'm happy to present. So with that said, and I'm thankful for the opportunity as well. With that said, then let's get started. And I think there will be time at the end for questions. So I want to talk a little bit about, of course, Team Topologies. That's the book I co-wrote with Matthew Skelton, but specifically about how does this relate to business agility, right? So many organizations are looking to increase their business agility, which tends to mean able to respond faster to what customers need, what the markets need, etc. So that's the topic of this talk, is to show how Team Topologies can help, and also the fact that it's not just Team Topologies. You are going to need other things in place and to really focus and increase business agility. So Team Topologies, this book, I have the physical copy as well here. And the book is now more than 2 years old, but has had a lot of really good reception. I think from my biased perspective, it's because the book is not very prescriptive, right? What we try to do is talk about what Charles Betts is saying here. What are some useful tools, patterns, and concepts for us to think about our operating model, right? The way we organize teams, how we evolve our organization to meet whatever challenges we have in our industry, in our technology, etc. And so this aspect of we need to continuously evolve, and we need to have a set of fairly simple but very powerful as well concepts and tools, thinking tools to figure out how do we need to evolve the organization to support the business needs. So that's at least how I see the book Team Topologies, is that those kind of building blocks for organizational design, operating model, as well as what are the constraints that happen in organizations, because at the end of the day, we're all humans working in this in whatever role, and so we are subject to constraints, human constraints, things like what are the trust boundaries for individuals, what are the cognitive load on individuals, etc. So that's just a quick introduction about the book Team Topologies. I will cover 3 main parts. First, let's at least explain from my point of view what I think is business agility, and then why we should be agile, not doing agile, just for the sake of having that label, right? And why to do that and to be agile, we need a product mindset. And I'll finish with the one example of how Team Topologies was adopted in one organization, and it helped increase that business agility. So what is business agility? And there might be many different answers. For us, and because we focus a lot on the ideas of fast flow, business agility, I think, is the ability to respond rapidly to changing internal and external conditions. So when you're saying rapidly, specifically in a matter of hours, ideally, and we now have data that shows that high-performing teams and organizations are able to respond even to, could be a customer request that came in earlier today, and by the end of the day, we're able to respond to that request and have that change actually to a product or to a service actually running in production, and the customer can start using it. So I think for all of us, if you think about what usually you would expect when you make a request to a company on some product, how long it's going to take to answer that request, we don't tend to think in hours, right? We tend to think in weeks, best case, and months, or even more in worst case, if they even answer us. And so, of course, depends on how big is the change. We're not talking about developing a whole new service in a matter of hours, but small enough changes that we can, if we validate for the organization, it's an important change, it's something we should do very, very quickly, then we have the ability. So the word ability is important. We have the capacity to do it if from a business perspective we think that's important to do, right? So we are talking about building the capabilities in the organization to support this agility, so we can make business decisions that are not slowed down by, let's say, the environment and the way that we have set up ourselves, not just the teams, but the technology, the processes, and everything else. All right, so it was important to clarify that. If we're, and why, part of the question is also why do organizations are more and more talking about business agility. The world has changed a lot in a very short time, and obviously, since we're in the Agile with Ukraine, just in a matter of months, things have changed dramatically for the people in Ukraine, obviously. But even before that, just in general, and there have been many changes. So the move to remote first work, of course, many organizations have been struggling a bit in the last couple of years. How do we keep working when now people are remote and they don't actually want to go back to the office in many cases because they found better quality of life by being able to work remotely, or at least have a lot more flexibility on when should I be in the office or not, even after the pandemic is over. It's not over even after we're in a situation where people can go back to the office, I should say. And so remote first is a strong, something that has changed. We know that this is even not that recent, even as the world of startups, as the technology progressed, we know there's more and more competition in any kind of industry, even the more kind of traditional ones that we used to think about in finance, insurance, retail, those kind of very traditional industries where you used to have basically only large players with a lot of money to do things. And now we see the fintechs, we see the small companies that don't have such a big barrier to entry anymore, not in terms of technology and even in terms of regulations, things have changed. And so there's increased competition globally and locally as well. And that has been going on and just accelerating in the past, I would say, even the past 10 years. And finally, the speed of change keeps increasing, right? We know that technology keeps changing, and even in a matter of years, sometimes months, if we don't evolve, we're going to get behind our competition that is leveraging the latest technology. And so we know that's important. Also, from a consumer perspective, our customers demand to be able to use the latest technology, right? It's not just internally in the organization. The demand for the latest technology is also from the customers, which is something that probably wasn't a thing 15, 20 years ago. But also, other changes, climate, geopolitical, all of these things mean that organizations basically need to move faster. They need to be able to respond faster, right? And when we talk about business agility, and maybe when we talk about digital transformation and some of those keywords, I think really what we should be trying to do is answer some questions. If we're doing large transformations that are not answering some need, then something is a bit weird, right? Then we're probably just doing it for the sake of saying that we are doing a transformation, or for the sake of saying we are going to be digital or agile, what have you. And so the questions we should be answering, I think, include at least, how do we optimize for a fast flow of change, right? We know we need to be able to respond faster. So what are the things we need to look at? And how do we know if we're actually improving? How do we make sure that we're focusing on the user needs? Do we even understand who our users are, who the different types of customers we have, and what are they looking for? Or are we just sort of in a kind of feature factory approach where we're just building stuff and we're not actually aware of how valuable those things are that we're investing in? And are we able to easily course correct when we need to adjust, right? If we detect that, well, we built something, it's not, the users are not picking it up. We haven't actually moved the needle. Maybe we wanted to increase sales, or we wanted to improve customer retention, or what have you. So, some kind of business goal we have, then that's why we want to increase the market share, or whatever it might be. And so as we are implementing changes to our services and our products, and we identify that we didn't actually meet the goals, or we didn't change the behaviors of the users as we expected or intended, are we able to course correct, or are we just sort of blind and just keep pushing through without and building more features without understanding, and more changes without understanding if we're going the right direction? So first, being able to identify that we are in the wrong direction, and then can we course correct? How easy is it for us to adapt and to make changes and to change priorities, change decisions, right? And in many organizations, that's very hard. It's like a train that keeps going and never stops, right? There's no way to kind of deviate, and we need a different process, or we need a different focus, or what have you. In many organizations, that's quite difficult, and so those organizations will have a hard time to achieve business agility. And if they go through some kind of transformation, they're trying to move towards more agility, they need to have built-in ways to course correct when we make wrong decisions or wrong. I like how people talk about making bets, right? We are betting on things when we build some new service or some new functionality. We're betting that this is going to be helpful, but we don't really know until we look at the results from the actual live environment, from the usage or lack of usage by the customers and users. All right, so fast flow that we talk about in Team Topologies is effectively a prerequisite for business agility. We won't be able to respond quickly to customer needs and market needs and business needs if we don't have fast flow of change, and which includes validating, as I was saying before, validating that what we're doing is actually providing what customers need. And so that was a little bit about sort of, at least my perspective on what business agility means. And of course, a lot of organizations talk about agility, and there's no doubt that Agile brought a lot of important changes. But there's still a lot of cases where there's too much focus on having the label that we're Agile, and not really what does being Agile mean, and what should we be doing. We now have, so to be Agile, for me, should mean that we're able to somehow demonstrate that we're improving over time, right? We're not stuck. It's not about, to me, being stuck with certain processes or certain ways of working. Yes, those are part of what we need to define and decide on how do we do things. But to be successful, being Agile is to show improvement, I think. And we now are in a fortunate position in our industry in IT compared to 10, 15 years ago, where we have data. We have a lot of surveys and data that has been analyzed in a significant way on what makes high-performing teams, high-performing organizations that can respond quickly to change. And so in particular, the State of DevOps report, there is an annual survey, collected a lot of data around how thousands of organizations do in terms of their performance, also looking at the business results that those organizations had. And so the State of DevOps report actually originated, or was the input, part of the input for a book called Accelerate, so that many of you might be familiar with, where Dr. Nicole Forsgren, Jess Humble, and Jim Keane kind of condensed. It's fairly short book. It's from the same publisher, but I swear I'm not don't have any royalties for mentioning the book. I was a fan even before we wrote our book, and so Accelerate gives us a lot of clues in terms of practices that help teams, also what kind of cultural environment we should have, and things that we should allow teams to decide, and other practices. But also it talks about 4 key metrics that, again, the research has shown, the data has shown, that are correlated to high-performing teams, and by consequence to high-performing organizations, if most of our teams are high-performing. And so those 4 key metrics are lead time: how quickly can we basically get a change into production, into the hands of our customers from the moment we sort of approved it, or we think we should work on it. deployment frequency, how quickly or how frequently can we make changes to our services in the live environment, in the actual production environment. Mean time to restore, how quickly can we restore when there are problems with our services and products, so that customers are not affected or are affected to the minimum amount of time possible. And change fail percentage, how often does a change that we deployed result in some kind of failure that has to be fixed or rolled back or something like that. So these 4 key metrics also help us because we can now make better decisions on what should we have in place, what do we need to address to hopefully improve on these metrics, right? And of course, there's a lot of kind of important, I would say, social and human aspects to consider when we're talking about metrics. There are biases if we're promoting, incentivizing people on just some specific metrics, then they might try to sort of what's the expression, that sort of play a game or kind of make it so that they are only focusing on improving that metric and not the overall results that we're of the work we're doing. But of course, we need to be careful on how we look at metrics and not compare different teams on the same metrics. It should be a team-based approach where we can look at these metrics. We know if we do well on these metrics, we probably are on the right path to improve our performance and therefore be able to respond faster to the business needs. And so over time, we can look at, are we improving these metrics inside the team? We don't need to compare to other teams, and often doesn't really make sense. So what are the kind of things that we need then to have in place? So obviously here I'm talking in generic way to most organizations, what the kind of things that are going to need, and then each organization has to figure out where they're lagging behind. What are the things that are actually causing more delays, causing more difficulty to get changes to customers done and available. And so there are some things on technical side that we, in 2022, we expect to see have good deployment pipelines in place so we can quickly get feedback on the changes. Are they, have they been deployed to production? Have they passed the tests? Have they passed whatever compliance checks if we have them? So they provide visibility, sort of the backbone to make sure that what we are deploying to our live services has the right quality, the right controls, and that we're not causing problems to our customers, right? This is one of the things we expect to have in place. Of course, all the cloud aspects, especially with cloud native, we want to have high observability on our services, be able to quickly diagnose problems and quickly recover from problems, right? So we don't have those kind of outages that take hours or days. That's today, again, 2022, that can be quite damaging for our business. So we need all these things. Cloud native, of course, allows us to do a lot of automation as well, automate recovery from some classes of problems, automate scalability, a lot of things that technology helps us with, no question about that. However, more and more, these are becoming sort of baseline. So they're not by themselves differentiators, because every organization that can see the competition coming for their business, they are investing in these things, cloud, automation, pipelines, observability, etc. Right, from a technical perspective. What's interesting is that, and related to Team Topologies as well. So last year, the last State of DevOps report from Puppet Labs actually tried to analyze how does the organizational setup and the way teams are structured, the clarity they have on their mission, on how they relate to other teams, how does that influence the success of organizations and performance at the organizational level? And so what they found is that organizations should not expect to become highly evolved and performant just because they use cloud and automation. Often they are held back by organizational structure and dynamics, right? So that's why, and again, this is based on data from hundreds or thousands of organizations. And so those technical and technological advances are needed, but they're not going to be the differentiators anymore as they were in the past sometimes. And so we need to also look at better organizational approaches, more dynamic approaches to actually be able to go faster, achieve fast flow, and differentiate and be able to have increased business agility. And so what this means is, or some of the things that should then be in place is, or focus, is have team ownership of software services. Start thinking at team level as the unit, right? Many organizations are still stuck looking at individual performance, thinking that about the 10x engineer they're gonna hire and make a huge difference. And there is, again, data. There are studies from Google, including from Google. There's a study called Aristotle's they did a few years ago, where they are known to have a difficult hiring process, and supposedly they hired the best people, or some of the best people in the market. And they found out internally that even if you hire the most brilliant person, if they are in a team that has some dysfunctions or that is slowed down by external reasons, or by the way the other teams are set up around them, this one individual that might be brilliant and super effective is not really going to make a difference for this team. That's basically what one of the things the study found. And so it just goes to show we need to have a team first approach, and we need to think about how do we support better our teams, how do we elevate teams to be able to perform and to have more ownership of the services, and where ownership is not just technical, is business ownership as well, that they understand better who are the customers of our service, how can we provide a better service that fits their needs and makes it easier for them to do the things they need to do. And so this is one of the things we need to focus. We need to realign our architecture of our systems often. And so some people might be familiar, or many people, with Conway's law. So the fact that we're more and more aware that our systems, we don't just have technical systems that run and provide functionality to customers. What we have are social technical systems. So the way we set up teams and the way they communicate has a very strong influence in the kind of products we provide. Effectively, there will be some solutions to customer needs that we won't find because of the way we set up teams, right? So we don't have certain communication structures in place, we won't be able to find certain solutions. I like a quote from Michael Nygaard. He wrote the book Release It, and he was saying that when you deploy a product to customers, you're actually deploying your organizational structure inside the product, right? Because that's what Conway's law says. There's a mirroring effect between teams and communication between teams and what we're able to achieve from a technical system perspective. And so often when we take that team first approach, it also means we often need to realign, rethink what is architecture really, and it's this socio-technical approach, not just the purely technical aspects. And so we might need to realign so that we have teams that are owning really end-to-end the different parts of our system, or different products, or different parts of a product, right? Depending on how big these things are. Another important aspect and approach that we think complements very well with Team Topologies is domain-driven design, because it helps untangle business concepts for faster flow, which is interesting when we hear people talking about monoliths, right? Well, we have a monolith. We have this huge code base that is very hard to change, or we have a monolith in the database where we have all this different data concentrated in a single database, and so it's very difficult to evolve the data model. Any kind of thing like that. We tend to think, oh, this is a technical problem, right? We have too much technical debt and things are too coupled. But actually, if you look from an organizational perspective, it's actually business debt as well. What often happens is that as business grows, we start building more things for customers, providing more functionality, more services, etc. And we don't always take the time to untangle these different things we're offering, right? We just build on top, on top, on top. And so, yes, it's technical debt, but it's also business debt in a way. We haven't been able, we didn't take the time to untangle all these different offerings, different types of customers possibly that we have. And what often happens, we get to a point where we're stuck. We can't move forward in any reasonable way because of how tangled things are, right? And so domain-driven design is actually very helpful to think about what are these different business concepts that we support, that we've developed, what are the core domains that we should be focusing on, what are things that are more utilities and we shouldn't invest as much, and so on. And once we have that clarity on kind of business domains, subdomains, etc., that becomes easier to align teams that we talk about in Team Topologies, Streamlined Teams. It's aligning to those streams of business value, right? And so domain-driven design is very helpful to understand that. Other things that we might need, that we might want to look at if we have, a real goal of increasing business agility in the organization, are worldly maps. This help us increase situational awareness and apply the right techniques. Basically, taking, I would say, a broader perspective on the products and the things that we offer, that we build, often that we build internally, and actually look at how is this going to evolve over time? What are the different things happening around us, so that we can sort of build a map of how do we think this let's say, product is going to evolve over time. It might start as something that is custom built for some customers that we have. Over time, we might productize it, and over time, because the market around us doesn't sit still, right? If we see that, if other organizations see that there's value in this solution we built for some customers, or this product we built, they're probably going to build something similar and try to differentiate in some ways from what we did. And so at some point, what usually tends to happen, of course not always, but is that your product is going to become more of a utility. And so if we don't realize this evolution, we're always just sticking to current products and services, and we think we just need to add more features. That's missing the point, right? So hopefully many organizations do this more strategic view, but you'd be surprised how many are not doing this, especially large organizations where you start to get to have a lot of kind of also business silos, and people are just looking at a very small part of the wider picture, right? And so it's if you don't use some techniques like this, it often starts to be difficult to have who is looking at the wider picture, right? And so I've probably explained worldly maps in a very how do you say that, in a very reduced way, right? There's a lot more to it, but I try to explain it in a nutshell. It's something definitely worth having a look, as are the other things I mentioned, domain-driven design, and the aspects of socio-technical systems and architecture as a broader kind of discipline than it used to be, just more technical. By the way, my kids are at home, so you might hear baby screaming, but hopefully not too loud. And so those things I just mentioned are very good sort of companions and needed to team topologies, right? Team topology by itself is not enough for business agility, but it does provide a lot of focus on how to achieve fast flow. First of all, if we need fast flow, but usually that's what most organizations need. How do we get rapid feedback? How do we clarify interactions between teams so that things work smoother and we don't have a lot of lack of clarity, lack of purpose on interactions, and things are not clear, right? And how do we evolve the organization over time? The organization dynamics, we need to be looking at that as something that almost constantly evolves, right? So we need to move away from thinking, well, we need to find the right organizational design. There is no right organizational design. There is possibly some structures and some ways of organizing that are helpful today for the problems we have and for the business needs that we have. But very likely in 6 months or even 3 months, that's not true anymore. And so we can't think of a static organizational model and that's part of the problem with large reorganizations where we say, well, let's do this big reorganization, will be much better afterwards. Usually that's not the case. There will be some improvements, but the kind of the big bang improvement is usually not achieved. And there can be many negative side effects of constantly or regularly doing every 3 years or every 4 years do this big reorganization. People get demotivated. They feel like, oh, here's another reorganization. Let's see what happens, but they're not really invested. And so, so that was a little bit of a detour about reorganizations. But so what Team Topologies brings to the table is then this focus on team first, team as the unit of delivery, as really what can really achieve higher levels of performance and provide us with ability to respond faster. The focus on the organizational evolution to meet the challenges that we have today or in the near future, not big bang reorganizations, and focus on team cognitive load, which is another very important aspect of why teams are often underperforming, is because they have too much on their plate, basically too much cognitive load. And so being aware of that and what are the different kinds of cognitive load, what's affecting the team, what's distracting the team from their mission, from that which should be aligned to some business domain or goals. Identifying what is distracting the team can help us then take the right decisions about how do we minimize those distractions, because we often ask teams to do too much, and to both from technical and business perspective. So Team Topologies is really the starting point is we want to achieve as an organization a rapid flow of change. But like I said in the beginning, that's change that is validated, right? It's not just quickly getting stuff into production, is actually validating that this is helping the customers and that this is helping the organization. So we also need the closing of the loop, which is getting rapid feedback from running systems. Now, part of the problem with to achieve fast flow is often we have many handovers, many dependencies that we call blocking dependencies in the life cycle for any service or product that the team is responsible for. If we depend, as in this example, if we depend on a test team to do the testing for us, or we depend on ops team to do the deployment for us, and etc. The more dependencies we have in the life cycle, the slower we're going to be, right? Because those are the teams. So the team doing all the testing is not just waiting for us to have our code ready to test, right? They're waiting on many other teams. So we start getting into problems of synchronization, and we need to have start having projects so that we coordinate the work of different teams. When are they going to work on what? And so all these things add up, but it starts with this handovers of work. Whenever the work leaves the team to go to another team and come back, then we're introducing delays. So those delays can take up most of the time that it takes to get a change to customers. Often it's around 85% is wait time in this kind of setting, and only 15% of the time we're actually doing something. We're actually coding, testing, validating, etc. And so that's why in Team Topologies, the starting point, the first team type that we talk about are Streamlined Teams. You can look at this as sort of cross-functional product teams. That is maybe a more common term, but products tend to be quite large these days. So you can't have one team that's responsible for the whole product. So what we're saying is that there's a stream of work that we can identify that has specific customers, that has specific value to those customers, is a better alignment. It's something that we usually can align to one team, right? And so in a larger product, we might identify there are different user personas or very different functionalities that we can actually align to different teams. There can be different ways in which we identify what are the streams within a larger product. But the key point here is that this type of team is going to have end-to-end ownership of that stream or that service they're responsible for. This means the opposite from before. It means the work never leaves the team. This is the whole thing. This is the whole life cycle. Ideally, starting with understanding customers, sort of on the left side, if you like, understanding customers, understanding what we're trying to do to meet their needs, and then being able to actually implement, test, validate, and put things in production and support those things in production. Because in this case, not only is this the fastest way to get from left to right, basically, from customer needs to actually having our services updated or changed, but also on the other side, this team is going to be able to get direct feedback through telemetry, through logging, and hopefully through direct customer feedback as well on what worked, what didn't work. We were expecting to improve sales, and nothing has changed. So we have inside the team the ability to look at that and decide how to course correct. That I was talking earlier, how if what we didn't have the impact we expected, the outcomes we expected, but what can we do next? What should we do next? So this is the starting point. But then, as you can imagine, this is very different. If you have this kind of setup, you have this more functional teams. A development team is going to be very far from a streamlined team in terms of capabilities. And so we need to help the teams get to this state, to this, let's say, ideal state where they have end-to-end ownership of their service. And that's where other types of teams come in. So we talk about enabling teams, complicated subsystem teams, and platform teams. Very quickly, an enabling team is usually a small team of experts in some domain. Can be anything, can be something more technical, I don't know, monitoring, test automation, whatever they are the experts. And they help the streamlined teams quickly gain the knowledge they need on those domains, right? They're like a capability multiplier by working together with streamlined teams, sort of being on the ground with the team and actually understanding what gaps they have, what do they need to know in this domain of our expertise. And then they do that on a regular basis across multiple teams. A platform team is a team that helps abstract away some details, some internal services typically that many streamlined teams need. Again, can be services to do monitoring, can be services to do database provisioning, can be any kind of service, and not just at the technical lifecycle level, but also you can have internal platform services around data, around business core functionality. The ultimate goal is to reduce how much a streamlined team needs to worry about, right? So those distractions, right? If we have a team, a streamlined team that's supposed to be focusing on the business and the customers, but we spend most of our time installing some tools for monitoring and deployment pipelines, and we need to fix problems with the infrastructure, or we need, a lot of things that end up consuming a lot of time from the teams. And so we should try to reduce those distractions, often through internal kind of platform services. And then the other key aspect of team topologies is having clear team interactions, right? So we often see organizations where where teams don't have the necessary clarity on how do we ask, first of all, which other teams can help us when we have some kind of problem? How do we ask for help? And these kind of problems are getting more aggravated for organizations moving to remote first or hybrid working environments that they had never experienced before, right? If it was confusing before, which teams to interact with and how, in a remote setting, it's even more, because people don't have a chance to talk face to face. And so what we've done is think about really what are the types of interactions that you need in an organization. Well, collaboration, but not in a very open-ended way where say, yeah, it's great, we should collaborate with everyone. No, it's actually collaboration has a cost. When we're collaborating with another team, we can't focus all of our energy capacity on our own roadmap, right? We're investing our time, our effort into this collaboration with another team. And so it has a cost, and we shouldn't expect, well, just everyone collaborates with everyone. That's kind of sounds nice, but in practice, it's not very effective if we don't have kind of more precise understanding of what collaboration, what is the goal of the collaboration. So for us, a collaboration is two teams working together to find a solution to some kind of problem, or to find some new practice that they need to define together for a defined period of time, right? It's not an open-ended thing. It's, are we going to need 2 weeks or a couple of days or a couple of months? And what are we trying to do? How do we know the collaboration is done, is successful? And so the more specific we can be, the better, because it actually has a cost to be collaborating. And then we have X as a service as another interaction mode. This is effectively typically when we provide a service to other teams in the organization. So it's typical for platform teams, where just like when you use services from Amazon, from Google, you expect that service to have very high quality user experience, documentation, etc. And so you need to, you don't expect to actually talk to the Google engineers or AWS engineers, right? When you're using their service, it's just, it has the right level of quality, usage, availability, all those things. So we are applying this interaction internally for the services we provide to other teams. And finally, facilitating is when one team helps another team gain knowledge and sort of bridge some gap in skills and capabilities. And so this is typical for enabling teams, but it could be between any two teams where one team has more experience, more expertise in some domain that the other team needs help with. And so with this kind of simple tools, as I said in the beginning, and kind of concepts, but they allow us to build a sort of a image of what are we doing today, what are we trying to achieve, which teams do we have. In this example, we have 2 streamlined teams. What is their mission? What are the service they provide, or part of a product, etc. What's happening here? There's some collaboration between the complicated subsystem team and the streamlined team. And we understand why that collaboration is happening. Maybe there are some new requirements on this complicated subsystem, right? And so that we're collaborating to understand how those requirements can be addressed, etc. And again, this is just a snapshot. It's for us to reason and think about what's happening and what we think is going to be helpful in the future. What's the next step, right? Maybe this collaboration will end, and we're going to need maybe some facilitating happening by this team for another team, whatever we have identified that we need to address. I'm going to try to speed up a little bit because I think I've been talking a lot on this first part, or in this first half, I would say. So another finding from that report I mentioned is that highly evolved firms use a combination of streamlined teams and platform teams as the most effective way to manage team cognitive load at scale. So essentially, we're saying we need some kind of ecosystem of teams that makes sense for us. And in particular, streamlined teams and platform teams provide this ecosystem where we can manage and we remove distraction, reduce cognitive load on streamlined teams by abstracting a lot of the details that they shouldn't be focused on. They should be focused on the business details, on the customers for their service, and not so much on everything else. One of the things we should do if we want fast flow is track dependencies between teams and separate blocking from non-blocking. So blocking dependencies are those handovers. So if we have to stop the work we're doing, wait for another team to do the testing or to do some infrastructure change for us, then that's a blocking dependency, right? So we're trying to visualize that here, where at the top you see blocking dependencies. We depend on another team to do something for us. And for fast flow, it's not that dependencies go away, because you can't have, or typically it's very difficult to have one team with all the skills and all the knowledge needed for the end-to-end ownership without any help, right? We need help from internal platforms to do things in a faster way, in an easier way. We need help from enabling teams possibly to learn skills in a way that's much more targeted, is much more specific to our needs, not just generically helping with guidance, but actually understanding what we do as a streamlined team, what kind of help we need. And so we want to move from blocking dependencies that tend to happen in the execution of the work itself to non-blocking dependencies, where it's more dependencies at the capability level, right? We have platform services that help us do certain things, but we don't depend on that platform team to do it for us. We can manage ourselves. And so we're looking to remove barriers to flow wherever they might be, which tends to be handoffs of work, approval gates, manual inspections. It's not that everything can be removed, but we should look at those and really take a deep look and think, do we really need this approval? Is there a way to either automate it, or maybe we don't really have clarity why this approval is in place? Often what we can try to do, and we should try, is to replace this kind of blocking dependencies with self-service APIs. If there are things that we need to control, that we need to check, can we move those things into a self-service approach, right? Embed that knowledge, codify that knowledge in some kind of services that help us keep the validations, keep the controls, without depending on a blocking dependency, depending on another team to do it for us. And so this is an important mindset shift, especially for around compliance. Traditionally, the compliance mindset has been to, we decide what's allowed, what's not allowed. And so we're saying all the knowledge and the compliance awareness is important, but can we move that to self-service approach, codify that knowledge and those checks into services that can help us, as well as help teach the teams on the ground what are the things they need to be worried about, because not everything can be automated, right? But this implies a strong shift in mindset from we are the gatekeepers, we control what can be done, to actually enable teams to do things by themselves with the right guardrails, with the right help from those self-service services in a platform usually. So this is what we're talking about. Have domain experts act more as enabling teams for compliance and governance, and also codify usually via APIs that the teams can then use to verify compliance. All right, and then the last main part is about the importance of having a product mindset. I imagine for many of you this is nothing new, but if we want to be able, I think for any kind of product or service, whether it's for external customers or for internal customers, we need to have a product mindset. So as Marty Kagan says, product is a holistic user experience. So when we're talking about internal platform services, we need to think about this as well. It's not just providing functionalities, how it's consumed, what is the design, what is the experience effectively of consuming this service needs to be very high, even if it's an internal service, because otherwise, again, we're distracting the teams, we're inflicting more pain than what we're helping them, right? And so for platforms as well, we need to think that product's optional to use. We don't force people to buy sneakers or to buy product, right? They should have the option to decide. A product is also carefully designed and curated. We're thinking about what kind of customers do we have, what kind of users, what is their what are the jobs they need to do, what is their work, what are their workflows, so that we can design the right tools, the right products to help them. When I say design, I mean design, implement, and provide those. Product should be simplifying things for users, not complicated, right? And so, again, internally, we should also have this mindset. If we're building some internal services to help teams, it should make their life easier, not more complicated. So I like this example from the jukebox, really simplified. How do I, in those days, how do I play a song? A product finally evolves to take advantage of technology changes, right? We talked a little bit in the beginning how technology keeps changing, and it's no longer, it's no longer a differentiator. It's just something we need to keep up with. Otherwise, we're going to be left behind, because our competitors can take advantage and use technology to move faster, to be more resilient, etc. And so we need a strong focus on the user needs, and that helps drive good software and good user experience, right? And so we often think about this for our customer-facing products, but we need to bring this internally as well. Think about our users, think about our developers, our testers, our people in support roles. How do we make the experience of consuming internal services easier, simplify their job, and make their life easier and more enjoyable, hopefully, by having this internal services. And this is, again, this is another important mindset shift, which is related to supporting business agility, supporting teams focusing on their business goals and not distracted. And so we need good platforms internally that provide the help that those teams need, but those platforms, those internal products need to be provided in a way that is focused on the users or internal customers. And so we need product management approaches for internal platforms as well. That's this chain is, I'm trying to explain how this relates to business agility, why this is important. And basically, if you restate what I said earlier, replacing product with a platform, you see that this makes sense in the approach that we're talking about today. The platform should be optional as well, as much as possible. There are some things that is hard to make optional, but a lot can be optional for teams to use. We need the platform teams also do a little bit of internal marketing, right? Especially if the organization is large, because not everyone is aware of what you've built in the platform, what services are available, what do they help with, and so we need to do a little bit of marketing, bringing that information to the teams. And actually, what we realized is after the book was published, actually, a good way to look at internal platforms is that it's a curated experience for our engineers, the customers of the platform, right? So this means that we focus a lot more on the experience, on what is really helping accelerate our internal teams, rather than focusing on technology first and focusing on what we can build, but as a good product approach, what should we build, right? And how do we know if we're building the right thing is also applicable to the platform. All right, if I have time, I can go through the example. I don't know, Andre, if you think we need to stop. This
I think it's okay.
A few minutes.
It's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would be very valuable and it would be great.
Yeah, so trying to show an example that brings together several of these ideas, right? In the book, we had a number of case studies, but they were focusing on specific aspects. And we now have a good number of case studies, industry examples on our main website, which is teamtopologies.com, from different companies. And we also worked with a number of, though these are the ones we are allowed to publish and we're interested in sharing their story. We've worked with many other organizations in different industries, and so it's been quite interesting to see how the ideas apply across different industries and different businesses. But the one I wanted to share today is Food Asylum. This is a chain, a retail chain focused on footwear, and they're, let's say, medium-sized, 2,500 employees. They're not huge, obviously, but reasonable size. And the problem they had in 2019 was that, if you want to look at it, is they had very little business agility that we were talking about. It was very hard to make changes for them. They had high fragmentation of the work. They had teams that were very, let's say, narrowly focused on something. They had a team of product managers, and then they had development teams across the world in the UK, Romania, India. Well, that was the R&D team. And you can see here that you wouldn't be able to tell very much about what they do and what is the mission of different teams. You have a checkout team, you have a development team. So sort of a mix of things, which tends to happen when we grow as an organization without, stopping to think about what is the organizational structure that we should be looking for to help address our needs. And so they actually use Team Topologies to align their teams with the 4 types of teams I talked about earlier. They identified that actually these are the streams, the business streams of value: e-commerce, retail, customer experience, etc. And then they had a team that was a sort of platform team. It took some time to adopt the platform as a product approach that I talked about. But they were trying to get there. So initially it was more of a shared services team, and they moved to become more of a platform team. But you can see already this is very different, right? So just having this understanding of what actually are our business concepts, our business offerings, right? Remember when I talked about domain-driven design, it's important to understand what really do we offer to customers and how the things that are fairly independent, right? So we can then allow these independent streams to evolve faster with less coupling, right? Loose coupling between business services is very important. And so this helped them have a lot more clarity, align teams to business segments, and start thinking about what kind of platform internal services are going to help these teams now have less distractions, have less cognitive load that is not focused on the actual business problems. Another interesting thing is the product managers that here you can see they used to be in a kind of separate team, and they found it very difficult to coordinate work when they wanted to bring some new functionality to customers or some new product. They were the ones who had to coordinate a lot of different teams and projects and schedules, etc. As you can imagine, it's not really a lot of fun when you spend most of your time pinging teams on how far are you going to meet the deadlines, and we're waiting on you to do that. That's not fun for anyone. And so what the product managers took out of this approach was that they were really interested in the team interaction types. It helped them actually have much better conversations with those streamlined teams about what were they working on, what were their roadmap look like, and understand, is this like at the overall picture, are these things aligned? Are we going in the right direction? What kind of interactions might need to happen between different teams here, different teams in this organization structure, so that we can have the different roadmaps sort of align in a much more loosely coupled way. So what I'm trying to say is that this business streams are fairly independent, but they're not fully independent. You know, there will be some changes where we need to coordinate. We might need teams to collaborate, again, in that more intentional, well-defined way, where we know we need to collaborate for maybe a couple of weeks because there are some changes here that we need to change our system to use your new API or whatever it might be, right? And so for the product managers, this was very helpful, being able to identify, okay, teams are more independent now, they can work on their own kind of business stream, but we know there are some things that require collaboration or require some kind of interactions to happen. Like I mentioned, they eventually changed from the service team to platform team when they really took on this product approach to the platform and the self-service approach to what they offered to other teams. They combined Team Topologies with wordly mapping. So here you can see, if you're not familiar, an example of a wordly map that I talked about earlier. You can see how there's, in the evolution axis, you have things going from genesis to custom build to becoming a product to becoming a commodity in the when you look at your landscape of the market. And so I won't go into details because we don't have time. We do have this industry example published on our website, so you can get more details. But they were looking at so if we have this evolution at different stages, what kind of teams do we need? More streamlined teams, more platform teams, what kind of services are going to be needed, etc. So it's a pretty cool example that you can read on the website more details. And this provides clarity of purpose for their teams. They allow them to understand when, for example, we need an enabling team. We start to see that many teams are struggling with how to manage their data or how to improve their data flows, etc. And so that was easier for them now to see there is a need for an enabling team to help others, the streamlined teams. And so the concepts they used, the main concepts they used from Team Topologies that we saw today is Streamlined Teams, the platform that's focused really on the needs of Streamlined Teams, evolving these interactions, evolving the teams depending on what kind of challenges we have today, and combining everything with combining Team Topologies with borderline mapping. So you have the link there to the examples. I think maybe the slides will be shared as well, so but it's quite easy to find. In terms of results, the product managers felt like they had superpowers, that they were able to have a much better flow of the work and understand when things need to happen, when interactions need to happen. And teams became more responsive, more autonomous, more able to take on more initiative to how should we evolve this service, because now we know we are responsible for this service. We're not just a generic development team that's waiting for requests, right? Okay, so this example was written by Paul Martin and Andy Norton. And just to finish then, basically Team Topologies helps us respond. Like I said, not just Team Topologies, other things are needed as well. But effectively, we're trying to respond rapidly to changing external and internal conditions. This is what, in a nutshell, the business agility is, right? And so we need situational awareness, clarity of business purpose, good technical practices, and localized decisions. So teams that are more autonomous, more understanding their customers that they're serving. So that means focus on user needs, user experience, viability of our service, what is our mission, etc. And we finished with an example. And so Team Topologies helps in particular to achieve these things that we saw here by encouraging decoupling of business concepts to help make the organization more responsive, provide patterns to turn blocking dependencies and particular compliance checks into self-service, flow-aligned, API-driven checks. Team Topologies is also a sense-making approach to a large extent, right? It's making sense of, are we in the right, or I should say, do we have the way we've organized and the way the interactions are happening, are they helping address the problems we have and therefore increase our agility? And helps the organization focus on the core mission with these business streams and limiting cognitive load. All right, and the last slides are just resources. Thank you. I'm sorry if I was a bit long, but I'm happy to stay a bit longer and ask questions if that's helpful.
Well, it did not feel that way, Manuel. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the presentation. It was awesome. And now we have some time for questions.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's great. Even, you know, when we actually read the book. Yeah. So wordly mapping probably is new stuff for me today.
That's great.
Because I didn't finish the last part of the book.
All right.
I have a quick question. Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Go on.
Yeah. Great. Hey, Manuel, awesome talk. In your book, you talk a lot about cognitive load of teams, right? And how one of the primary things leaders essentially should be doing is looking and measuring at cognitive load. Any kind of top of mind tips on what are some of the flags of a team having high cognitive load?
Yes, if we're talking about streamlined teams, some of the flags might be that you don't hear the team talking much about customers to start with. You don't hear the team discussing what can we do to address some customer need. And so that might be a flag. And that's often the case where in teams that are sort of relying on some backlog that someone else tends to prepare for them, or is the product owner inside the team, but the team as a whole is not really very much involved in deciding what are we going to build, why, how do we know if what we build actually was helpful or not. So that can be a flag that the team is focused a lot on, maybe on technical aspects, that we should look at how do we minimize that. And so that's one of the flags, I would say. I think you're right. The part of the role of a lead should be looking at which teams have high cognitive load. Why is that the case? So that we can help them reduce the things that are distracting the team and help them focus more on the customer. But then, depending on the organization, the reason for that high cognitive load can be different. You can have teams that were very successful in the past and building some products and services, and so they have too much cognitive load because they were asked to do too many things. They were asked, okay, now build this other product, and then you have a team that has become a firefighting team, right? They just respond to problems. They don't have basically any capacity to do more. And so that's also important to be aware that teams that are high performing don't necessarily stay like that forever. So the cognitive load might increase in sort of the wrong way or not undesired way. And so they kind of, at some point, their performance goes down in terms of responding to business needs. And for other teams, there are different reasons. Too much cognitive load because they're responsible for too many things on the technology stack, and so they don't have enough help to do things in an easier way, etc. So I think the lead should take an interest. You can simply have a conversation with the teams, like where do you spend your time? What are the things you find difficult? What can we do about that? Or you can do an assessment. We have an example assessment in, I can share the link. But even just talking to the teams is going to help us as a starting point to why is the team overloaded with, and what can we do about that?
And actually seems like cognitive load like relates with some sort of multitasking. So if you are like in a lot of contexts, yeah. So
Yeah.
actually we had a huge project right now, and like it's different in different like sides of the project, yeah, because of scale. And when I had the teams in these different parts of the project, it was very hard to focus, you know.
Yeah, and that tends to happen when we don't have what we call streamlined teams. We might have more kind of if we have development teams, that's already better than just having people in pools and creating teams all the time. But even if we have stable teams, but they don't have a clear business mission, and we think it's we just, they're going to work on this today, and next month they're going to work on something else, like you said, it just adds up context switching, adds up difficulty to actually understand what we're doing more deeply, so we can actually make better decisions. I can say also, because this is then sometimes follow-up question, of course, when you align teams to business segments or business streams, you also need to be careful that over time you're not having teams kind of working on business areas that are not relevant anymore, that are not what we should invest anymore. So, but we can keep the team stable, and then if we identify, well, these business areas are not, we shouldn't invest anymore, then the team we can ask the team to shift their focus to something else, right? And I think that's okay. We shouldn't assume that once we align teams to business domains or subdomains or streams, that we can just let them, that's gonna be fine forever. The business might change as well. And yesterday we were focusing on this type of customer, and today we have to focus on another type of customer, for example.
Yeah, so can I ask another question? So you mentioned that from time to time, it will be good for us to, revise and refresh our structure. So maybe you can help us with, for example, events or triggers which highlights that, okay, right now we should revise our structure?
Yeah, so actually one of those triggers can be the actual team interactions. So when we are having some interaction and for some reason it didn't work out as we expected, maybe we were expecting to collaborate on some work that crosses the two teams, and then we realized that one of the teams doesn't know enough about this area of work to be able to actually collaborate, or it can be any other reason. So something we can use is the trigger can be when the interactions seem awkward or something didn't go as we expected. But we can also, that's more at the team level, but I think it's also important to have in the organization some people who kind of on a regular basis try to reason about, are we focusing on the right things? Our teams, are we helping the teams address their challenges? Are we increasing business agility? Or do we need to change some things? So enabling teams can also have partially that role, because they work with many, or normally they would work with many different teams. They might identify also problems. Depending on the organization, there can be different ways and different triggers, but definitely thinking about how do we know that we need to rethink the structures should be done with triggers, and also on a regular basis. Every quarter, for example, at least have a conversation about what have we seen in the last quarter. Are there some things that we can do, or we need help with some capabilities, or I would say both. Think about triggers that can be helpful, and have a sort of regular frequency to just talk again about where you are.
Okay, thank you, Harry.
We have a question from Gloria. And what is the largest organization that has transformed from a monolith architecture team structure to this structure? Any recommendations on how to best start, or what not to do?
I don't know what is the largest organization. I can tell you that we have seen clearly the adoption of Team Topologies by large organizations throughout these 2 years. Obviously started with small organizations that are able to make those kind of more organizational decisions sort of faster. But in the last year, we have seen, of course, I cannot share the names, but large banks, also insurance, asking for help. And some of them, I think, are doing it in a reasonable way, which is not go for a big bang where, well, now every team is going to be one of the 4 types. That's probably not a good idea to start like that. And so I think organizations who are doing this in a good way is, okay, let's take maybe one of our business domains and try to figure out what are the blockers to flow inside this domain. And let's start making some smaller changes, start addressing some blocking dependencies. Maybe we can start looking at what are sort of streamlined teams, what are the gaps, what kind of platform do we have. And so I think, like with any transformation or moving to Agile or what have you, start small and start applying the ideas, understand better the ideas as well, right? One thing is to read the book, definitely another thing is to make changes in the organization and figure out if they are helping or not. So like with any transformation, if you go big bang, in 6 months, all the teams need to be Team Topologies compliant. That's not gonna work very well. Start small, and then as you see the results, as you get people in the organization more familiar with Team Topologies ideas and more familiar with what works and what doesn't work for your organization, then you can start expanding to more areas. It depends a little bit on the how centralized or how distributed is the organization. because one large bank that we've been helping, they're very decentralized, and so different regions effectively do things very differently, and so they don't try to make all the regions work the same way, but they do try to share good ways of working. And so I think that's an interesting approach where you basically give autonomy for a certain region to decide, and maybe some regions want to adopt Team Topologies ideas, and then what you centralize is more the experience and knowledge, and say, well, this worked well, and then others might be inspired. But it depends on kind of the culture of the organization as well, obviously.
So did I get your concept correct? So it's like evolutionary path. So like if we like can differentiate, less probably starts with flip. So yeah, with revolution. So your opinion is to go iteration by iterations, yeah. So evolve.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Evolution rather than revolution.
Got it.
And that speaks a little bit to previous questions. For large organizations, well, I don't want to be too polemic, but I think evolution is what makes more sense for large organizations. You need to learn when you're making changes what works, what doesn't. But unfortunately, many organizations try to do revolution because it seems easier to execute, right? It seems like if we just let's take this framework and apply it, and we'll be in a better state. And so that, from a decision point of view, seems more straightforward, rather than saying we're going to take small steps and we're going to learn and evolve, because there's a lot more uncertainty there. But when you take a more prescriptive approach, you don't necessarily get to that better state, and you don't necessarily do all the learning that you need to do.
You know, maybe in some banks it's easier to start anew from scratch, yeah, than to evolve.
Could be.
It's also about how you sell it, because in order to start anything new, even evolutionary or revolutionary, you have to sell it, right? Because you have
Yes.
budget for that. And yeah, sometimes it makes also sense to flip, right? But flip doesn't also happen overnight. You need to prepare for that, right?
Sure.
So, and even if we do the flip itself, it doesn't mean that we cannot improve iteratively and incrementally, right?
Yeah,
after the flip doesn't mean that if we flip, for example, or if we change, that it's going to be set in stone. It won't be changed, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. So Manuel, we thank you a lot for the great presentation. It was awesome. You can see the amount of questions there was, and the amount of discussions, and the chat was active. It was awesome. We thank you very much. As for the next events, guys, so we're gonna have a short pause with May holidays, because at the beginning of May we have our holidays in Ukraine, and right after them we're gonna come up with a bunch of new stuff. We're gonna have even more and more stuff, so stay tuned with us. And we're gonna have next speakers, next workshops, and next events. Don't forget to donate and subscribe to our channel on YouTube and on our website. Artem, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, Manuel, thanks. Special thanks from me today. I'm not very available, but as a father of a two, I know how it was hard for you to continuously share your wisdom and expertise with us, with all the circumstances around. Say hi to your kids. We don't want to take more of your time, and thanks a lot for volunteering. You was one of the first, I believe, who provide us with slots, and yeah, thank you once again.
You're welcome, and yeah, don't worry.
One of the first who donated as well.
Yeah,
made a generous contribution to the cause. So thanks a lot, Manuel.
You're welcome.
And for those who are not in Kyiv, just 30 minutes ago, they sent another missiles to the city center. So 2 missiles were bombed in Shevchenkivsky region of Kyiv. We don't know the whole information about people yet, but yeah, they are continuing. Even though that the chair leader of United Nations now in Kyiv. Yeah.
Yeah.
This
The leader of
Gutierrez.
United Nations, Gutierrez.
So for them, it's not even a signal to give some corridor of safe space for international politics. Yeah, that's how it's going. See you soon.
That's the way to finish.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
hope that that
See you
will
guys.
be the finish.
yeah.
See you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And see you until the next one.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Turn off the recording finally.